I thought I had the perfect life, a happy marriage, a good career, and a home filled with love. But lately, something felt off. My wife grew distant, and the warmth between us disappeared. I wanted to believe it was just a phase, until I uncovered the painful truth. On our anniversary, I decided to give her a night she would never forget. What happened next changed everything. I, 35M, have been married to my wife, 32F, for 8 years. To be honest, everything was going great. At least that's what I thought. We met in college, and it was one of those whirlwind romances you read about. We clicked instantly. I was completely smitten with her. Fast forward a few years, and we had what seemed like the perfect life. A nice house that I bought before we got married, successful careers, and a solid group of friends. I thought I had it all. But as we all know, nothing is ever as perfect as it seems on the surface. For the past few months, things had started feeling off. She was distant, glued to her phone more than usual, staying out late with work meetings and girls' nights out. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something in my gut was telling me that things weren't right. The loving looks she used to give me turned into short glances, her once warm hugs became cold, and our conversations felt forced. It was like the woman I married was slipping away, and I couldn't figure out why. Then I found out the reason. It all came crashing down about a month ago. I was cleaning up around the house when I noticed her laptop was left open on the kitchen counter. I'm not proud of what I did next, but something in me couldn't resist. She had been so secretive lately that I needed to know what was going on. I felt guilty as I clicked through her messages, but that guilt quickly turned to nausea. There it was, in black and white, messages between her and some guy I'd never heard of. Let's call him Mike. They weren't just friendly either. The words were like a punch to the gut. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing, and the kicker, I wish he wasn't in the picture. I spent the next few weeks preparing. I played the part of the clueless, loving husband. I didn't want her to suspect a thing. If she thought I was oblivious, the surprise would hit even harder. I kept reading her messages in secret, painful as it was, and tracked their plans. She had no idea I knew. Every time she went to meet the girls or stayed late for work, I knew exactly where she really was. It was excruciating, but I kept my cool, waiting for the right moment to strike. Then, it hit me. Our anniversary. I would give her the ultimate surprise. I had no intention of having a messy, dramatic confrontation. I wanted her to see how deep her betrayal cut without me saying a single word. My goal was simple. She'd walk in thinking she was coming home to a romantic evening, but instead, she'd find her entire world falling apart. Here's how I did it. On the day of our anniversary, I made sure to act normal, even cheerful. I left for work as usual, kissed her on the cheek, and told her I couldn't wait to celebrate when she got home. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't planning on seeing him right after her shift. I felt my stomach turn, but I held it together. This was all part of the plan. While she was at work, I started preparing. I went to a local florist and bought a ridiculous amount of red rose petals, more than you'd ever think a single person would need. I scattered them from the garage door to our bedroom, creating a path she couldn't miss. It looked romantic on the surface, but the deeper meaning was far from it. Next came the messages. I wrote short, cryptic notes on small cards and placed them along the trail of petals. They were ambiguous enough to seem sweet at first glance, but with a sinister undertone that would only become clear once she reached the bedroom. Every moment was a gift. One read. Another said, "All secrets eventually come to light." As she followed the trail, I wanted her to feel a growing sense of dread, knowing something was wrong but not being able to put her finger on it just yet. The grand finale was in our bedroom. I felt sick. My heart was pounding, and it felt like the walls were closing in on me. My wife, the woman I gave everything to, was cheating on me. I couldn't believe it, but the more I read, the clearer it became. This wasn't a one-time thing. It had been going on for months, maybe even longer, and she was in deep. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the shock. Maybe it was the fact that our anniversary was coming up. I don't know what it was, but instead of exploding on her, I decided a plan. If she thought she could fool me, I was going to give her an anniversary she would never forget. On the bed, I laid out every piece of evidence I had gathered, printed screenshots of her messages with Mike, photos I had discreetly taken of the two of them together, and, in the center of it all, the divorce papers I had drafted. It was a perfect tableau of her betrayal. I also packed up all of her belongings, placing them neatly in suitcases by the door. She wouldn't need much time to get the message. I finished everything just in time, with the petals in place, the notes carefully arranged, and the evidence laid out on the bed. I left the house. I didn't want to be there when she walked through the door. I wanted her to experience it alone. So, I went to a nearby coffee shop, trying to keep my nerves in check while waiting for her to come home. I got the text at around 6:30 p.m., right on schedule. "Hey babe, on my way home. Can't wait for tonight." I felt a wave of bitterness wash over me as I read it. If only you knew, I thought. I replied with something casual like, "Me too. Can't wait to see you." And then, I waited. It didn't take long before she got home. I imagined her opening the garage door, noticing the trail of petals leading into the house. At first, she probably thought it was sweet, a sign of the romantic evening she had been expecting. She followed the path, picking up each note along the way. I imagined her initial confusion turning into unease as the tone of the messages shifted from loving to cryptic. Then, she'd reach the bedroom. That was the moment I had been waiting for. I wasn't there to witness her reaction, but I didn't need to be. I could picture it perfectly in my head. Her walking into the room, her eyes landing on the bed. The photos, the texts, the divorce papers, all of it laid out like an accusation she couldn't deny. I wondered how long it took for her to realize what was happening, that she had been caught, and there was no escape. And just as I had planned, her belongings were packed and ready by the door. This was no longer her home. About 10 minutes later, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Her name lit up on the screen over and over again, but I didn't answer. I knew she was freaking out, and I wasn't ready to talk to her. Not yet. I just let the phone ring as I sipped my coffee, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. I loved her once. Hell, I still might have in some twisted way, but I wasn't going to let her betrayal slide. Then the text started coming in. "What is this? Please, can we talk? It's not what it looks like. I'm so sorry, let me explain." She was panicking, just like I knew she would. I kept ignoring the calls and messages, letting her stew in the aftermath of her lies. Eventually, I drove home, knowing I had one last thing to do. When I arrived, the house was eerily quiet. The petals were still scattered on the floor, but the notes were gone. I walked into the bedroom, and there she was, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the divorce papers, tears streaming down her face. When I got home, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The trail of petals still lined the floor, leading to the bedroom where she was waiting, just as I knew she would be. When I walked in, she was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring down at the divorce papers, her face streaked with tears. I could tell she had already gone through the evidence I'd left for her. The messages, the photos, all laid out like an accusation she couldn't escape. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I could feel the tension hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. She was trying to hold it together, but the panic in her eyes told me everything. She knew she was caught. There was no way out of this. Still, I could see her trying to piece together an excuse in her head, something that might salvage the situation. But we both knew it was too late for that. I didn't need to ask her why she did it, or how long it had been going on. I already knew the answers, and frankly, I didn't care anymore. The betrayal had gutted me, but I wasn't going to let her see that. Instead, I kept myself calm, collected. I had planned every part of this moment, and now it was playing out exactly as I had imagined. I glanced over at her packed suitcases by the door. They were ready and waiting, just like I had left them. This wasn't a negotiation. She was leaving tonight, and nothing she said would change that. Her tears didn't move me. At this point, they felt hollow, like an act she had rehearsed 100 times in her head. I wasn't falling for it. I wasn't going to give her the emotional outburst she probably expected, the big argument where she could twist things and make herself the victim. No, I was done. This was her mess, and now she had to face the consequences. After a while, she stood up, grabbing the suitcases with trembling hands. She didn't look at me as she walked toward the door, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I didn't say a word. There was nothing left to say. The door closed behind her with a finality that echoed through the house. And just like that, she was gone. After she left, the house felt emptier than ever. I stood there for a while, staring at the closed door, letting the silence settle around me. It was over, just like that. No screaming, no dramatic breakdowns, no last-minute apologies that could change anything. She was gone, and I was alone. A part of me expected to feel some kind of satisfaction, a sense of closure after all the planning, all the hurt I had gone through in silence. I thought that seeing her face the consequences of her actions would bring me some relief. But now that it was done, all I felt was numb. I walked back into the bedroom, where the remnants of my plan were still spread out on the bed. The photos, the printed-out texts, the divorce papers, everything I had used to expose her lies. It had worked exactly as I wanted. But now, looking at it, I didn't feel victorious. It just felt sad. This was supposed to be our anniversary. 8 years. I thought we'd be celebrating together, maybe looking back on all the good times, talking about the future. But instead, it had ended like this, with her betrayal laid bare and her bags packed at the door. How did it all go so wrong? I couldn't help but wonder how long it had been going on. How many nights had she spent with him while I was home, oblivious? How many lies had she told while looking me in the eyes, pretending everything was fine? The thought made me sick. I had given her everything, and she had thrown it all away for someone else. But now, it didn't matter. There was no fixing this. The damage was done, and I wasn't interested in picking up the pieces. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. As for me, I didn't know what came next. The house was mine, but it didn't feel like home anymore. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of her. Photos on the walls, memories in every corner. It would take time to move on, to rebuild my life without her in it. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I had already made arrangements with my lawyer to push the divorce papers through. This wasn't going to be a drawn-out process. I wanted it over as quickly as possible, so I could start fresh. I had lost enough time, and I wasn't willing to give her any more of it. As I stood there in the quiet, empty house, I realized that this was just the beginning of a long road ahead. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of control over my life again. I wasn't the one being lied to anymore. I wasn't the one in the dark. Now, I was the one calling the shots. And as painful as it was, that was something worth holding on to.
Enjoyed the story? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss new content. Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think and what you'd like to see next. And if you want to keep watching more videos like this one, just click on the next video. See you there.